Hello, how are you doing? It is the weekend, so I thought it was a good opportunity to do a general literary tastes, reading habits, getting to know you kind of tag with 20 quickfire questions to just go through, because I've had some comments and questions recently if I've done any Q&As, and I've had some more subscribers recently. I've reached 25,000 subscribers, which is amazing, so thank you for subscribing and watching me talk about books. And I just came across this book tag recently when because Larry has opinions on his channel. He did this tag, so I'll put a link to that below, as well as a link to the original tag with all 20 questions on it. And if you want to answer these as well, if you want to make your own video, or if you want to answer them in the comments, it'd be really lovely to get to know you as well. I think the creator of this is sort of more in the kind of reading fantasy books sort of realm, but I think the questions can be pretty well adapted to sort of general reading tastes. And because I mainly read literary fiction and new fiction and new titles and contemporary literature. So yeah, that's more my sort of vibe. But yeah. Hello, I should introduce myself first, if you've not watched many of my videos before. So I'm Eric. I go by the name Eric Carl Anderson, because both Eric and Anderson are both quite common names, so I use my middle name as well. And it's Eric with a C and Carl with a K, just like it's Liza with a Z, not Liza with an S, because then that would be Lisa, wouldn't it? Lisa Manuli. Anyway, so yeah, I generally read new fiction. I follow a lot of book prizes, and and I'm an American. I grew up in America, but when I became an adult, I moved here to the United Kingdom, and it was just supposed to be for a temporary period, but I've lived here in London for a really long time now, and I love living in this city. And I've been able to create here a big tall bookshelf behind me, filled with books. That brings me so much happiness every time I walk into my little library here, and it just makes me happy. So I'm gonna get into the 20 questions, and I'll just give brief answers. So question number one is, how many books are too many books in a series? I think this is sort of more geared towards kind of fantasy books, but actually in literary fiction and new fiction recently, there's been, I think, a resurgence in kind of sequels of being written about books. I mean, there's the whole Lucy Barton series. I mean, I love the writer Elizabeth Strout, and you can see actually just up behind me here, I'll get them down so you can see them. There's the Lucy Barton series here, all in a trio, which is so wonderful. I absolutely love My Name is Lucy Barton, in the Anything is Possible, which is more like a collection of short stories, and Oh William, which it's probably my least favorite of this group, but is still very good. And so love her writing so much. And and it's really interesting how you see the development of the character of Lucy Barton and so many different aspects and facets of her life throughout the different books. And I've also been reading some classic literature of Anthony Trollope and the Barchester series. And there are 6 books in this series, which I wouldn't say is too much, because I'm reading the 4th book in the series of the Framley Parsonage right now, and which is so fun because there's been a lot of characters from the first 3 books that have been coming back in that. So I would say that the literary series should have as many books as possible, as many books as it needed, till it starts feeling really tired. So question 2 is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? I often don't really mind them, though it's an interesting question to ask, because I was just talking about this recently in a review video I did about Hanya Yanagihara's new novel, To Paradise, which includes a lot of cliffhangers, and I think probably too many that, it got to be a bit frustrating of wanting to know what happened to all these really interesting characters that I grew to really really emotionally care about. So yeah, I found that a bit difficult, but like in general, like I don't need a neat, satisfying conclusion to my books in order to enjoy them, you know, to my fictional books, because yeah, that's not really the point, I don't think. So question 3 is hardback or paperback? Well, I mean, either, and you can also add to that e-reader, or I also read on my phone or listen to audiobooks. To me, it is words are words. They're all words. If you're consuming them, then you're reading, and you know, that's all there is to it, really. I think it doesn't really matter the form of it. I mean, I love physical books and the beauty of physical books, but the actual form of it I don't mind so much. I mean, I'd probably say paperback if I had to choose between one, because it's cheaper and it tends to take up less space on your bookshelves, and I don't have any more room on my bookshelves, so constantly trying to find new space. Okay, question 4 is favorite book, and that's really easy. My favorite book is The Waves by Virginia Woolf, which I've read so many times, is so fascinating. There are so many layers to it. It's such a rich, complex novel, and the older I get, the more resonance and meaning it has every time I go back to read it. So it is, yeah, such an incredible book. I did a whole thing about different audiobook versions of this novel recently, because I have some very strong opinions about the different audiobook versions of it, and something I love to do is walk through the streets of London while listening to an audiobook of The Waves, or ride a bus throughout London and listening to the waves. It's just such a wonderful experience. So question 5 is least favorite book. I don't tend to think in terms of, I don't know, books that I hate, or that I just really don't like. Though from last year, probably a least favorite book is The Hummingbird by Sandro Veronese, which I did a whole video about why I hated that book, which I really don't often do, because I don't often do sort of like negative criticism of the books I'm reading. If I'm not enjoying a book, I'll just put it down and move along. But yeah, that book I had some strong feelings about, and I'm quite nervous that it might be on the International Booker Prize list. So I'll be voicing my opinions again if that does end up happening. Question 6 is love triangles, yes or no? Well, I'd say sure, the more the merrier. I mean, I don't know, is that love triangles, or is that just threesomes I'm thinking of? But yeah, actually interesting, like To Paradise, I think, has a lot of love triangles, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have any too strong opinion about that. Question 7 is the most recent book you just finished. You just couldn't finish, should correct that. So as I said, if I'm not enjoying a book, I'll just put it aside and move on to something else, because there's always so much more to read. So most recently a book I didn't finish was A Single Rose by Muriel Barbary, which I thought was okay, but I just wasn't really getting that into, even though it's quite a short book. So I think I got halfway through it, but just put it aside. It has an absolutely beautiful cover, and a lot of the writing is really beautiful, but I just couldn't really get that into it. So question 8 is a book you're currently reading. So I'm currently reading Wayward by Dana Spiotta, which I'm sort of halfway through and quite enjoying. I'm sort of, it's all right, I would say that. There are some aspects of it which, I've just wasn't too sure about, but then some things have happened that has got me more into it. And like I said, I'm currently reading Framley Parsonage, which I'm a little over halfway through. You can see my bookmark there, and massively enjoying. That's so good. So a book you're question 9 is the last book you recommended to someone. And that would be, I think, Bewilderment by Richard Powers, which my partner just read recently. And he had also read The Promise by Damon Galgut, and he said that he agreed with me that he thought this should have won last year's Booker Prize rather than The Promise. I mean, they're both great books, and they're very different books, and so, you know, I think they can obviously both coexist in the world because, yeah, they're both great pieces of literature, but if I was a judge and I had to pick, I would have picked Bewilderment. So I was quite chuffed that he agreed with me about that. Question 10 is oldest book you've read, and you should include the publication date, apparently. And so that's difficult to think of. I think probably the oldest book I've read is Don Quixote, which was published in two parts in 1605 and 1615. So could you imagine at the time if you'd if Don Quixote was just coming out and you had to wait another 10 years for the second part to come out? I mean, I know we like to complain these days if we have to wait a week when we're watching a TV series and waiting a week for the next episode to come out, but imagine waiting 10 years for the next, the second part of this book you're really enjoying. But I don't know what the conditions were in Spain when Don Quixote was first coming out, or how widely it was published or available, or what the literacy rates were. But I think that's probably the oldest book I've read. I mean, there's probably bits of things I've read that are older than that, but I can't quite recall them. Question 11 is newest book you've read, and include the publication date. And so, again, that would be To Paradise, which was just published this past week. So, it's definitely the newest book I've read, although Wayward just came out last week as well. So that's also brand new. Question 12 is favorite author. That's another quite easy question for me to answer, which is Joyce Carol Oates, she's published 5 books last year, maintains an incredibly high caliber of writing, and causes chaos on Twitter almost every day. And how much more could you ask for from an author? And I think she's incredible. I've read so many of her books and think so many of them are of such great quality. And I've interviewed her a number of times here on my channel, and she's just such an incredible artist and a wonderful person. And that's my favorite author. Question 13 is buying books or borrowing books. Well, it would be buying for me. I'd sort of need to own the book, only because when I'm lent books, I tend not to give them back. So this is a warning to you. If you ever lend me a book, you probably won't ever get it back, because I don't sometimes it takes me quite a while to get around to reading a book. I was taking out books from the library for a while, but to be honest, I just have so many new books coming in that I both buy and that publishers send me that I don't really need to often take out books from the library or borrow books from people. But I tend to just buy books. Question 14 is a book you dislike that everyone else seems to love. And this isn't, it's difficult to think of, but I think that a book that I don't dislike, I did enjoy it, but I just didn't, my expectations of it were so high because so many people had recommended it to me, that when I read it, and I was just sort of like, it's okay. And that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I just, for like years, had so many people say like, this book is amazing, this book changed my life. And then when I went to read it several years ago, I just felt like, oh, that was good, but I don't really see what all the fuss is about. And I think I enjoyed The Goldfinch more than that. That's just my personal opinion. I think maybe if I'd read The Secret History when I was at university, I might have felt the same way and felt incredibly strongly about it. But I didn't. I read it later in my 30s. So question 15 is bookmarks or dog ears? Well, bookmarks, because we're not barbarians, are we? We don't dog-ear pages. That's something I don't think should be done. It definitely wouldn't be allowed in my household. So definitely bookmarks. I don't underline passages. I don't write in books. Though I sort of wish I did, because I always find it fun when I come across passages that have been like marked or highlighted or commented upon in the margins, but yeah, I definitely don't dog ear pages. Question 16 is a book you can always reread. And yeah, and like I said, probably The Waves by Virginia Woolf is a book that I've reread so much. But I would also say the journals of Joyce Carol Oates, which I've reread a number of times. Or sometimes I'll just, if I'm up early in the morning, I'll get a cup of tea and I'll open up to a random passage and just read some of it, because it's so. Her process of talking about her writing is so thoughtful. I mean, often people will comment, oh, she publishes so much, she must be a machine. But you can see if you read these journals that she's really not. And every day she puts in a lot of thought into the form and structure of what she's writing and what will be the best vehicle for the ideas that she wants to write about. And but you also get this sense of her just sort of sitting there looking out the window, because she'll often comment upon the weather. The way that she describes the sky is often so beautiful and really interesting, and so you get this sense of her just sort of sat at her writing desk, which is what I think she spends most of her life doing, and is why she's so productive. And so yeah, and I've also made some separate videos about Joyce Carol Oates. If you ever want to get into reading Joyce Carol Oates but don't know where to start, I've made videos about that, so don't worry about that. A question 17 is, can you read while hearing music? I would say in general, no. I would much rather have silence and quiet when I'm reading. The only time I would listen to music while reading is if I'm out and about and if it's quite noisy around me, if I'm on public transport or something and lots of people are talking around me, I might put some music on, but it'll be music that's just instrumental. There can't be any real vocals because I would find that too distracting. So yeah, just something to kind of drown out the noise around me. And so yeah, definitely would rather just read in quiet. Question 18 is one point of view or multiple points of view? Well, points of view, I think both styles of narrative are valid, and yeah, it's sort of interesting actually with this new novel Wayward that I'm reading. It's in the third person, but mainly through one character's point of view, but then it gets to a point in the book where it switches to another character's point of view, and I was really glad it did that because I felt like it was getting too bogged down in the main character's point of view, so I was sort of glad that it did that, but I think obviously both kinds are valid, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other because it depends on the subject of the book that I'm reading. Question 19 is, do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? Well, oh yeah, obviously I just read To Paradise, all 700 pages of it, just sitting down in the morning. No, yeah, obviously it depends on the length of the book, and so most books I'll read over multiple days. There are some exceptions, like Claire Keegan's recent novel, which is so short. I did read that over a few hours in a morning, but in general, yeah, I'll read it over multiple days. And I think, like Larry said in his video where he answered these questions, like, I'm not a speed reader. I do read every word on the page. I know some people do these sort of methods and just kind of like skim over sentences to get a sense of the subject and story being talked about, but I like to read every word and take it all in, and I do think I'm quite a slow reader, and I enjoy that because it allows me to completely immerse myself in the story and get into it, and I don't think you should worry about that just because you want to get through it quickly, or there's more books you want to get to, or yeah, I think it's not a good thing to put that kind of pressure on yourself. You should just enjoy each book as you're reading it, and enjoy the pleasure of it and the whole experience of it. I mean, that's why I love reading so much, and is, to me, is part of the whole point of view of it. And then question 20 is just that sort of standard end of tag question of who else do you tag, and I'm going to do that sort of standard get out of that by saying I tag everyone. If you want to do this tag, like I said, and make your own video about it, or if you want to answer the questions in the comments below, I'd love to read your answers and get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, that would be really lovely. So I hope you found this interesting as sort of a way to get to know me a little bit better, and I hope you're having a good weekend and that you're reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.